Let's see. I promised I was going to call on this gentleman back here. Yes. Sir. No, no, right here. You keep passing by this poor guy. Question. President Obama, well, I mean, I still have a few more months. Actually, 8 months and 52 days, not that I'm counting. It's interesting, when you're in the job, you're not thinking on a day-to-day basis about your legacy. You're thinking about how do I get done what I'm trying to get done right now. And I don't think that I'll have a good sense of my legacy until 10 years from now. And I can look back with some perspective and get a sense of what worked and what didn't. There are things I'm proud of. The basic principle that in a country as wealthy as the United States, every person should have access to high-quality health care that they can afford. That's something I'm proud of, I believe in. Saving the world economy from a Great Depression, that was pretty good. The first time I came to London was April of 2009, and the world economy was in a free fall. In part because of the reckless behavior of folks on Wall Street. But in part because of reckless behavior of a lot of financial institutions around the globe. For us to be able to mobilize the world community to take rapid action to stabilize the financial markets. And then in the United States to pass Wall Street reforms that make it much less likely that a crisis like that can happen again. I'm proud of that. I think on the international stage, the work that we did to get the possible nuclear weapons that Iran was developing out of Iran. And doing so without going to war is something I'm very proud of. There are things that people don't pay a lot of attention to now. But the response to the Ebola crisis for about 3 weeks. Everybody was sure that everybody was going to die. We're all going to get Ebola, we're all going to die. So, I'll look at a scorecard at the end. If you think about the gap between something I'm most familiar with, the American Civil Rights Movement. You had abolitionists in the 1700s who were fighting against slavery. And for 100 years built a movement that eventually led to a civil war. And the amendments to our Constitution that ended slavery and called for equal protection under the law. It then took another 100 years for those rights that had been enshrined in the Constitution. To actually be affirmed through the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and then it's taken another 50 years to try to make sure that those rights are realized. And they're still not fully realized. There's still discrimination in aspects of American life, even with a black president. And, in fact, one of the dangers has been that by electing a black president, people have then said, well, there must be no problems at all. And obviously you see Ferguson and some of the issues that we've seen in the criminal justice system, indicating the degree to which that was always false. So, does that mean all the work that was done along the way was worthless? No, of course not. But it does mean that if any of you begin to work on an issue that you care deeply about, don't be disappointed if a year out, things haven't been completely solved. Don't give up and succumb to cynicism if, after 5 years, poverty has not been eradicated. And prejudice is still out there somewhere. And we haven't resolved all of the steps we need to take to reverse climate change. It's okay. Dr. King said, "The arc of the moral universe is long. But it bends towards justice. And it doesn't bend on its own. It bends because we pull it in that direction." But it requires a series of generations working and building off of what the previous one has done. And so, as president, I think about it in those ways. I consider myself a runner, and I run my leg of the race. But then I've got a baton and I'm passing it on to the next person. And hopefully they're running in the right direction, as opposed to the wrong direction. And hopefully they don't drop the baton. And then they go and then they pass it on to somebody else. And that's how I think you've got to think about change, generally. All right. It is a young woman's turn. Yes, right here, in the red. Yes, you. No, no, that's you. You're wearing red. Yes. Question. President Obama, yes. question. President Obama, well, that's an interesting question. And are you talking about climate change, in particular? Or are you talking about just generally, on a whole spectrum of issues? That's interesting. It's interesting. Because I started as a community organizer trying to pressure politicians into getting things done. And then now I'm on the other side, and so what has worked and what hasn't? Well, in the United States what's been remarkable is the rapidity with which the marriage equality movement changed the political landscape and hearts and minds, and resulted in actual changes in law. On issues of LGBT rights generally, I didn't need a lot of pressure. I came in working on ending a policy called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That was preventing LGBT citizens from serving in our military openly. We did that very systematically. Policies in terms of those who had HIV/AIDS being able to emigrate to our country. Hospital visitations, there were a whole host of things that we were already doing. But on marriage equality, I was in favor of what's called civil unions. My notion was initially that labeling those partnerships as marriage wasn't necessary. As long as people were getting the same rights. And it would disentangle them from some of the religious connotations that marriage had in the minds of a lot of Americans. And that's where I think I have to confess my children generally had an impact on me. People I loved who were in monogamous same-sex relationships explained to me what I should have understood earlier. which is it was not simply about legal rights but about a sense of stigma. That if you're calling it something different it means that somehow it means less in the eyes of society. I believe that the manner in which the LGBT community described marriage equality as not some radical thing. But actually reached out to people who said they care about family values, and said, if you care about everything that families provide stability and commitment and partnership. Then this is actually a pretty conservative position to take, that you should be in favor of it. I thought there was a lot of smarts in reaching out and building and framing the issue in a way that could bring in people who initially didn't agree with them. As a general rule, I think that what, for example, Black Lives Matter is doing now to bring attention to the problem of a criminal justice system that sometimes is not treating people fairly based on race. Or reacting to shootings of individuals by police officers, has been really effective in bringing attention to problems. One of the things I caution young people about, though, that I don't think is effective is once you've highlighted an issue and brought it to people's attention and shined a spotlight. And elected officials or people who are in a position to start bringing about change are ready to sit down with you, then you can't just keep on yelling at them. And you can't refuse to meet because that might compromise the purity of your position. The value of social movements and activism is to get you at the table, get you in the room. And then to start trying to figure out how is this problem going to be solved. You, then, have a responsibility to prepare an agenda that is achievable, that can institutionalize the changes you seek. And to engage the other side, and occasionally to take half a loaf that will advance the gains that you seek. Understanding that there's going to be more work to do, but this is what is achievable at this moment. And too often what I see is wonderful activism that highlights a problem. But then people feel so passionately and are so invested in the purity of their position that they never take that next step and say, okay, well, now I got to sit down and try to actually get something done. So the Paris Agreement that we just negotiated and that a number of countries just signed. Yesterday on Earth Day, the agreement we shaped is not going to, by itself, solve climate change. The science argues that the world is going to need to do a lot more in order for us to prevent catastrophic climate change. But my strategy from the start has been, all right, if I can get the Chinese to agree with us. As the two largest emitters, that we have to do something, and lock in China with us for the first. Time to take some serious steps around reducing carbon emissions. And if by getting the two largest emitters I can now leverage all the other smaller countries to also put in their own targets for emissions. And if we can set up an architecture that recognizes the need for carbon reduction. And can allow people to allow countries to hold each other accountable, then that's a start. And we can now start turning up the dial as our science and our understanding improves, and as technology improves. So that poor countries don't feel that they have to choose between development and carbon reductions. And there are all kinds of compromises in that. But it's a start.